Once again, let me welcome you to Picks and Bones. I'm your host, Eric. I'm bringing you the best of Americana, red dirt, black dirt, good old American rock and roll, as well as some Carolina clay and just fine honky tonkin'. Want to give a huge shout out to Mike Carroll over at Audio Mass Audio and Video Solutions in Greenville, South Carolina. He came in, did some upgrades to the studio, and hopefully you guys are enjoying a better and higher quality sound for this show. I would like to also invite everyone, and I mean everyone, to go to our Patreon page. Get in, folks. It's a way for you to help support this show like you do all the artists that you love. We have different levels, and with every level, you get something different. You know, you give $10 a month, you're going to get a t-shirt out of it. You go, there's $5 a month where you're going to just get access to behind the scenes interviews, maybe some music reviews. You never know what you might end up with. And every bit of it is appreciated, and it helps keep this show going, just like you do for all the musicians that you love that you listen to on this show. And if you are listening and you're looking for sponsorship opportunities or looking to sponsor somebody, hey, reach out to me on my Facebook, Instagram, and or Twitter. You can just look in our show notes and you'll be able to find all the links to everything that matters as far as this show goes. This week, I sat down with my man, Seth Jones. This guy is from Texas. He's as red dirt as they come. One of the most genuine, down-to-earth people you're going to have the opportunity to meet. But not beyond that, he pays homage and respect to that old 90s country that we grew up loving and just couldn't get enough of. But not that, it's not just that, rather. He's a one hell of a songwriter. So you guys, please enjoy.
What is up, Eric, and what is up, Picks and Bone Nation? The little mini conversation we had before it started, I was thinking, damn, if it's going to go like this, it's going to be great, because I was loving that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I just love, anybody that, if you're going to slow down long enough for me to have the opportunity to talk music with you, I'm absolutely going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Or as my wife says, if anybody will stand still long enough to let you get into that conversation with them, they just need to understand what's coming.
Yeah, and I'm actually a huge introvert, which is probably pretty common with songwriters. But
oh, absolutely.
People do not, like, people I work with and people that I've have done interviews with or even have a conversation with at a party, they do not believe me when I say I'm an introvert. But I've researched it a lot because it's really weird to me how I am like this. I'm a huge introvert, but I can be outgoing too. Like, it's not that I don't want to, I'm not a misanthrope. I have been before, but I don't dislike people. I don't mind talking to people. It's just that I've always, I've derived my joy from myself, like from the inside. Like, if you look at my toddler videos, you'll see me in the corner by myself playing with blocks, and there's other kids like playing in the middle of the room. And that's just always been my natural preference. Like I can think better and more clear like that. But I mean, when I start talking, I could talk. We could do a two-parter today, and it would be an accident. It would just happen.
Right. And see, and that's, I love that because, I mean, anytime, music is just great. And especially when you can start breaking down some fundamentals and everything. Just like, I was telling you before we really started rolling that, I've listened to your new album through multiple times now. And, your title track, and you allude to this, once we get this, going and everything. But man, this is like, it's that old school 90s country that we all grew up on and loved. I mean, it's got that, you've still got that red dirt to it, but you can also hear kind of little homages to like the, King George himself, and,
Hmm.
these guys that were kind of paving the way for everybody else to do it. And I mean, come on, where were you drawing from for this?
Well, I loved. First of all, thank you for listening several times. I appreciate that. But I I loved the fact that Puzzle Man was the title track, and I wanted to put that first. I wanted that to be the for the forefront because that really sums me up as a writer because it I am pretty complex dude. I've battled depression my whole life. I've, so many ups and downs. And, it's depression's not just sadness, it's depression. Like
Yeah.
nothing has to happen. It's a chemical reaction, and the things you love, you're no longer interested in. And it affects relationships and all that stuff. And I figured, like, I write songs about love, I write songs about disdain and angst. I write all sorts of songs, and I figured what better way to lay the foundation of an album than Puzzle Man straight up telling everybody, "Hey, you can't figure me out. I can't figure me out." So I figured that was a good starting point. And as far as the question, what was I drawing from? Man, believe it or not, I played rock and punk music for a long time.
I love it.
Yeah. So, but I've listened to, man, Sublime, old 97s, Ragweed, George Strait, 90s country, from 90s country to metal. There's a band called Bayside. They're straight up like punk metal type stuff, and they've got the best angst hate songs you've ever heard.
That's
And I was
awesome.
into them for years. So like I drew from everything really, but as far as the general sound of the album, I didn't have a big plan, but the musicians I was working with kind of settled me down because I've made albums before that sound like punk, country, folk. Like, what the hell is this guy doing? And people don't respond great to that because they can't keep up, which is not an insult. It's actually an insult to me. I couldn't keep myself under control. But the musicians having that consistency there, that kind of kept it grounded a little bit. And I think my opinion, and based on what people have been telling me, it kind of walks a line between 90s country and the kind of independent red dirt type of country, like from George Strait to Cody Jinks,
Oh yeah,
kind of.
absolutely. And and I've got to really throw a kudos to you, sir. You're one of the first people to bring up old 97s. I love old 97s. And if anybody knows me, they know I'm a huge Turnpike Troubadours fan. But Doreen is one of the hottest songs I think anybody has ever recorded. And, both do such a great job on that. But, seriously, major kudos to you for being the first artist on the show to bring up old 97s. That,
Man,
you showed me a deeper appreciation for music than I think you realize. So,
well, let me tell you something about the old 97s. They may be my favorite band of all time, quite frankly, because I told you I did punk and country. I
oh,
mean, what
yeah.
the hell are the old 97s? They're a punk and country type band,
Yeah.
I mean, they do all sorts of stuff, but the fact that they can rock out, play country, and all the while Rhett Miller writes these lyrics that you can appreciate on the surface, but then you can just sit there and think about them. And he has so much skill to his. I mean, he throws in so much that when I was an early songwriter, I didn't really get it. I just loved it. But
Mm-hmm.
now I get it. Now that I've written hundreds of songs, I'm thinking, man, he threw alliteration in there and then immediately went to something real sporadic, and that contrast really brings the verse out. And I never knew that kind of stuff. I was like, I love this song, and I don't know why. But now I listen to it, and I'm like, damn, Rhett, you did it again, buddy.
Well, and there's certain, from a musician standpoint, there are certain notes and, those occidentals that you can, add in there, with that are subtle, like a fiddle or whatever, that actually stirs that in somebody. That it goes beyond, that helps punctuate that feeling of, if it's a sad song, because I mean I know a lot of guys they've made their living on doing sad songs and depressive stuff, because they're like, this is who I am. And
Hmm.
when you can pair those lyrics with the perfect combination and those harmonies and those really deep down melodies, that's those ones like we were kind of talking about. If I hear a song, even the first time I hear it, if I get goosebumps, I know this is going to be a great song. I'm going to love this artist and this band. And surprisingly enough, there's so many people that are just putting their heart and soul into it, and they're not guys, anybody that's nowhere near a record label. They're independent guys, because they're just like you. You're doing your own thing, and that, as a musician myself, and as a lover of the genre, you have my utmost respect for that, because that takes a really different level of integrity to stand up and go, you know what, I'm going against the system.
Yeah, and there's a there's a balance beam you have to walk if you want to sustain yourself in that, because if you, and I've thought about this a lot because I've gone through this crap. If you just play just the most crazy whatever I want to play type stuff around, and no one's digging it, or like hardly anyone digging it, you literally run out of funding to release more stuff. I mean, at some point
Absolutely.
you have to make some sort of money, and that doesn't mean you have to sell out. You just got to find your crowd and then kind of give them what they want sometimes, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? And the old 97s, they've managed to play, they've released albums that were pretty damn pop, like not straight up radio pop, but real, had lots of poppy sounds. And they've
Hmm.
released albums that were pretty damn punk. And they've kind of done all sorts of stuff, but they found a big niche crowd. Like, you could ask, you could randomly ask a million random Americans who the old 97s are, and most of them have never heard of them, despite them being a band for 30 plus years. But the people that have heard of them, they love them, and they spread the gospel, and they buy their stuff. They go to their shows. So they found a way to be themselves and sustain themselves, and that's really the perfect situation.
And there's another band out there that's just like that, which is Southern Culture on the Skids. Don't know if you've ever heard of them, but these guys, they're popular across the whole Southeast and everything. They're a great band. They're been playing for 30 years. They play kind of, if you would, it's almost like a punk honky tonk country. That's, you can definitely tell, they're from, East Coast. What I'm lovingly referring to these days to our scene over here is, this is red clay country now, and red clay spread all the way across the country. But and if you really want to look things historically, but we won't even go down that rabbit hole. But with that red clay feel, I mean, they'll bring somebody up on stage every show, and they're going to rub fried chicken on somebody's belly. I have been drug up on stage and had fried chicken rubbed on my belly, and they throw fried chicken out into the crowd. That is their stick. But you either love them, or you either hate them, or you rabidly love them. There is no in between with these guys. And that's kind of, I mean, I see the same thing with like old 97s. You either hate them or you're going to love them and respect them.
And that brings up another point. Southern culture and on the skids,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
I just looked them up. It says on Spotify alone, they've got about 60,000 monthly listeners,
Uh huh.
and I have never in my life until right now heard of them.
You're going
But
to love them.
they found I don't know roughly 100,000 people, which isn't a big number in the grand scheme. Well, there's 8 billion people on Earth,
Yeah.
but that's enough people to keep you doing your thing for as long as you want to do it, and that's badass. And
Absolutely.
those bands are everywhere. That's one reason I love your podcast, because you're never going to run out of people for other people to discover, like
Nope.
quality people.
Nope. And they're tucked away in little pockets all across this country. And because, I mean, you and I, we found each other just, I mean, through you found me and heard the show, but and you're down in Texas, there's guys all over Texas right now that I'm kind of talking back and forth with about bringing on, but there's also guys I've got in Illinois, in Oklahoma, in Oregon, and there's even guys doing damn fine, outlaw honky tonk out of Detroit. I don't think you can't define. That's why I call it what we know and love. I know it's branded as Americana, but really it's just American music. And American music is it can come from anywhere because it's about people that still, know what it is to work hard to make a dollar for the day and to come home dirty and to love their family, know how to, wind down with some good music, imbibing their favorite beverage of choice, or, being what I lovingly refer to several friends of mine as herbally enhanced.
Very common in the genre. Yes.
Yeah. And, and just to go back to one other thing, I know you were talking about, I know I'm changing subjects, but you were talking about the depression and everything. I don't think there's out of all my local buddies that play and that I'm out supporting all the time, there might be two that are actually happy that are happy on stage and are happy with how they write their music. And people love them for that. And they're known for that. And they put on the most vibrant, raucous shows you're going to go to. And, I support the hell out of those guys. But it's these other guys. It's the ones that, they're an artist based out of their own, trying to get out of their own heads because to fight through that depression and that angst and that hurt and sorrow or whatever. Those are the guys that are writing some of the most beautiful stuff and the ones that really can move you. And I think you find that more common in music these days is you don't have to be happy. Your happiness is not derived from what you're not right. You're writing about your life and how you feel or something that you've been led to write about. And you're not performing happy, but that's what's making you happy. I know it sounds nuts, but that's kind of how I see it.
Well, artists are nuts, and
You kind of got
you
to
bring
be.
up you gotta be, and you bring up the depression thing again, and you'll hear me you call it American music. You'll hear me call it alt country, not because not because that's the right answer, but because I don't know what the hell else to call it.
Right.
Kind of like off the highway, like I said. That's what I call alt country.
Dirt
And the
road
thing
music.
that dirt road music, and the thing that really makes me think, how do you determine what it is? I think it is the depression. It is the grittiness. I've heard you use that word in a former podcast.
Oh yeah.
It is the blue collar aspect. Did you see the Ken Burns country music?
Loved it.
extravaganza. It was one of the best things I've ever watched. Well, I think it was Loretta Lynn that said something along the lines of, "If it's real stuff, it's country," is what she said, and that
Exactly.
kind of made perfect sense. I'm like, yeah, that's. I really do get depressed. I really do get in love and then fall out of liking the person I love. Like all this weird, complex stuff that we normal people who work for a living and get sad and try to hang on and try to medicate yourself with whiskey every now and then and all this really complex shit that happens to people. That's real stuff. It's not the trying to pick up a girl in the club. I mean, yeah, that really happens, but that's not your life. And if that is
No,
what you do every
it's,
day of your life, that's
that ain't
sad. That's
living.
sadder than being depressed.
Yeah. I mean, and really, that's not living if that's how your life is being spent, because you're kind of wasting away and just you're throwing yourself away on something frivolous.
It's hollow.
Yeah. No, and going back to Ken Burns Country, I actually put a tweet out there after I finished watching it, and and it was a really simple tweet, and I'm like, okay, we just finished watching, the last episode of Ken Burns Country. I said, if you can sit through that whole episode and your face not leak a little bit, you don't have a soul.
Yeah, dude, because those country singers back in the day, uh, before it got really, really, which I guess there's been different sects of country the
Oh
whole
yeah.
time. Like you had Chet Atkins, who I love by the way, but he had like a formula. He had the Nashville sound,
Mm-hmm.
and that's still going on today. The Nashville sound is hip hop beats, and let me pick you up and get you a drink, girl. That's the formula today, but real country music, it is going to make you feel something. It is going to make you cry, either happy tears or sad tears, or it's going to make
Mm-hmm.
you really think about. Like Chris Christopherson, he'd make you think about stuff.
Oh God, yeah. And I mean, I've always loved Christopherson. I mean, talk about a hell of a songwriter. And he's another proof you don't have to have the greatest voice in the world if you're telling a great story.
Yeah, and I think about man, I have a million examples. I can't think of any of them right now. But there's a lot of people that their songwriting is so good and their voice is not good. But over time, when people keep hearing these great songs, they begin liking the voice. Here, I
Exactly.
just thought of somebody, Robert Earl Keen. That's not the best voice in the world, but when I hear it start up on a song,
You
I'm
love
so
it.
excited to hear the song. I'm like, yeah, I love Robert Earl Keen's voice, whether it's good or not. I love it, and I want more of it.
Yeah, and I mean, and Robert O'Keen's a classic. I mean, well, and even if you want to go back to the whole rock genre of things, you know, what's his name? Of course, I'm going to completely draw a blank at this point in life. Um, we'll come back to it. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys that you wouldn't think that that's the greatest voice I've ever heard. But like you said, the more people hear it, but then I also think that opens up people, it opens their ears and their minds up to give other people a chance that they may not have before, because they're like, their voice is so so. But then it's more of, let me listen to their lyrics and let me listen to their, how they are as a musician when they're composing the music for that. When that comes out, that can completely win you over. Because I mean,
Those are
go ahead.
those are gateway artists, man. Like gateway drugs.
Yeah.
You take one drug, you like a soft core drug, and you're like, I guess I'll try this one. I heard this one was good too, and all of a sudden you're a crackhead. There's gateway artists that are like, I mean, their voice ain't great, but you really get into them. And then there's these other artists that also you had hangups about. You're thinking, like you just said, you know what? I really will. Let me listen to this guy. Like you start listening to people differently. You start paying more attention to the lyrics. Those are gateway artists. They
Yeah.
they get you off the shininess of a voice and a sound and get you into the lyrics, and then they open it up for other artists similar to them.
Well, it's all about the storytelling aspect of things, because You can write a million songs and never truly tell a story. But then, like your music, I mean, you tell great stories with your lyrics. And that's a skill that, you either have it or you don't, I think. I don't think I mean, I guess you can learn and develop that over a lot of time, but some people you can just tell that comes a little more natural to than it does others. They're like, well, I mean, going back to Turnpike Troubadours, Evan wrote some of the most great stories, and he tells a story. And on one album, there are bits and pieces of that story that gets told throughout because there's always a reference back, like his grandfather's Browning shotgun. That's a one that keeps going through, but it's those stories that makes everything so identifiable. Like with Puzzle Man. Puzzle Man, you hear that song and you're like, you know what? I completely identify with this. This is not it's not a fluke. What were your influences?
Well, like I said, specifically, I didn't have specific influences when I was doing the album, and it was really weird doing this album because I had some songs picked out that I thought I might want to record, and then I recorded two of them. The first two I recorded were Puzzle Man and Mishandled Heart. I recorded those two, and then I went back to, we did that in a day, and then we scheduled another session like a week later, and I had these songs I'd planned to do, but I had been listening to Puzzle Man and Mishandled Heart, the demos, and that kind of inspired me to write more. So there were a couple of songs I wrote during the making of the album. Like I sat down and like a Dream Girl, I wrote that. I was getting out at the gym one day, and me and my wife went to the gym, and I said, "Go on ahead." And she was like, "What?" I said, "Just go." And I sat in the car, and I was on my phone, the little note app. You got these little. And I started typing these lyrics, and then I got the voice recorder out and recorded a line just to preserve the melody. And while I was lifting weights, I was thinking the whole time about this damn song. And then when I got home, she went in her room, and I quietly started working out the song. And about 30 minutes later, I had it. And like that was a result of listening to my own recordings from that session. So the album itself, the direction it started going, influenced new songs. So, I mean, oddly enough, the songs that I began recording started influencing the rest of the album. It also influenced the ones I picked that were already written. You know what I mean? So I really played it by ear.
Yeah, and Mishandled Heart is actually, with us doing that transition, this is going to be the next song people are going to hear and get to listen to, because that song, I mean, that's a classic country song if there ever was.
You cannot steal what's already yours. So when my heart was taken, I did not file theft report, 'cause if I'm not mistaken, you have been the keeper of and protector from the start, the one and only caretaker of my mishandled heart. So when it's broke, when it's wrecked, I guess you're the one to blame. When it's worse than I'd expect, I guess I should look your way. When it's down and it's out, solid like some trampled art, I guess you're the one to thank and blame.
And that's another one that kind of just stuck with me, and that's why I selected it to go in this episode. Not that the other stuff's not great, but those were the first two that really, really moved me And I'm like, okay, these are the two that we've got to feature. Well, one, Puzzle Man is the title track. So, but
Well, it's funny you say that. Those are two of my favorites too, and that's why I told the mastering guy. He said, "Hey man, can I put them in order for you and see what you think?" And I said, "Absolutely." I've tried putting my own songs in order on previous albums, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And he put I said, I want Puzzle Man first. And he was like, I agree. And then he put the order out there, and I think Mishandled Heart was like number 5. I said, man, let's put that one at 2 because those are two of my favorite, and I want people to make sure they hear those. But then I was concerned about the back end of the album because a lot of people, they'll start listening and kind of peter out, even if they like it. They'll listen to 4 of them, and then they'll go into work, and then they'll never bring it back up again, if they're not big fans of you or something. And I kind of wish the song Never Learn, it's later in the album, like number 9 or something.
That's a good one.
I love that one. And I think that's, as far as telling stories, that's one hell of a story. And it's real shit, and it's real heavy and deep. And I feel like a lot of people haven't heard that one. And I'm like, damn, should I have put that one number 3 or number 4? But at the same time, you also don't want to front load the album with all your favorites. You kind of want to spread them out throughout.
Well, then that song may be our outro song for this interview. Then that way everybody gets a little bit of taste of the whole thing, and from beginning to end, which also tells a story in and of itself. Well, Seth, who were your influences growing up? I mean, what made you decide, hey, I'm going to go down this path and I'm going to be a singer and songwriter?
Oh man, this could be a podcast by itself. But I go into these. I'm really weird in a lot of ways, actually, but I'm really weird in the fact that I'm real regimented. It's funny, I'm a PTA, and we were in PTA school, and my carpool buddy, we were going over autism because, you have to work with autistic patients sometimes, patients with autism, and they're talking about the spectrum of autism, and they're like, and some people, they have a low case of it, and they're really very routine oriented, regimented, and do the same things every day. And my buddy, his eyes got real big, and he looked at me, and I was like, oh shit, because
I may be high functioning.
I might be on the scale there, but that's how I am. And I'm kind of like that with music too. I'll get into a band and I will destroy their catalog for months. Like, I will just be on that sucker and I will not budge from it. Now, I'm not like that as much these days, because I'm trying to listen to a lot of different people. But in high school, man, I listened to Sublime. That was one of the few bands I listened to for like 2 years. I was just infatuated with their carefree attitudes, their punk, the fact that they'll break out a freaking freestyle on a track, rapping. And I was like, dude, these guys, they don't care. Like, it was a punk attitude. We don't care. We don't care if you like it. We don't care if you wanted to hear 12 punk tracks. We're gonna rap on number 9. Screw you. That's kind of how they were. Of course, it was all born out of being effed up, drunk and on drugs. But whatever. But then I got into the Red Dirt thing started happening. People told me, my cousin told me about Pat Green when I was like 13, and I didn't know who it was and didn't care. But he was like, you have to listen to him. And I never did. I eventually did, but
And then you were like, damn it, why didn't I listen when I was told
I was like,
to?
I should listen to my cousin, man. My cousin knew what he was talking about. But then I started getting into ragweed, cross Canadian ragweed. And I loved that's another vibe. Sublime, I love their vibe. I loved ragweed's vibe. There was another one of those, man, we'll do whatever. We'll do country, we'll do rock, we'll do a 2-minute solo. I got into that, and then I got into the old 97s. And I started writing songs when I was 16. And I honestly think that kind of retarded my development a little bit, because I was writing all sorts of genres and I couldn't settle down and just kind of work on the craft of writing a specific type of song. And I didn't start settling down and writing specific types till I was about 26. I'm 33 now. But on the back end of all that, I think it ultimately helped, because it really diversified what I can do, and it kind of expanded my bag of tricks. I've been through it. I can get over a writer's block real easy because I've I've been through this stuff. And if you want to grow as a writer, and I don't know how you could force this, but it just happened to me. Like write kind of indie sounding stuff that doesn't have a genre tied to it, like people can't pick it out.
Yep.
Because if you can make that sound good, now you jump into punk or you jump into country, and that's kind of like, it's real easy. It's like child's play. It's like, man, if I could make that other crap work, I can make this work. So it was a long journey, and I was inspired by Sublime, Old 97s, Cross Canadian Ragweed, Mike McClure, Bayside, all sorts of bands, man. But it's always come back to me. It's always come back to the grittiness, the blue collar, that kind of, I don't know, man. The Old 97s. If I had to explain Old 97s to somebody, I would say gritty, and that's what I really like about it.
And real.
Gritty and real.
Yep. Because, I mean, it's so identifiable by everybody that listens to them. So, what was your first guitar?
Oh, my first
or
guitar.
What was the first instrument you learned? Or
okay, that's a good topic right there too. I come from a musical family. My grandpa, who was a lifelong pastor and landlord, he landlorded so that he didn't have to take money from the church.
Okay.
So he never took from the church, and he actually made a gospel album when he was in the 70s, early 70s, and he played like 12 instruments on there: guitar, mandolin, harmonica, drums, organ, piano. I mean, good Lord, I forgot everything he played, but he was a great musician. My grandma plays the organ and the piano like it's nothing. My mom is a great singer. She sounds like Whitney Houston. My dad plays guitar, bass, drums. My brother used to reel off Red Hot Chili Peppers solos like it was nothing. My brother, me, and my dad are all drummers.
okay.
And it's funny, I never really practiced. I just sat down at my dad's drum kit and started making a beat. And it was like, oh, well, you're just a person who drums. That's all it was. So for a long time in my high school bands, I would drum and sing like Don Henley, because nobody else wanted to sing. They're like, oh, my throat hurts. I think they were just nervous.
Or
I
got stage fright.
Yeah, well, that's what they didn't want to say it, but that's what was happening. So I was like, I'll do it. So I used to drum and sing, and I always loved writing songs. That was always been my favorite part of music, is writing songs. But when you are only a drummer, that's hard as hell.
Yeah.
And I would tell my guitar player, like, hey, play that other sound again, and he'd play it. I'd be, no, the one before that. And I'm like, yeah, start with that. And that, although we did come up with some good songs, that is not a sustainable way of writing songs. So I started picking at the guitar a little bit. I was terrible at it, of course. And then I quit for a while, which, by the way, that is a very common thing for people. I played it, the pick fell in the hole and my fingers hurt, and I quit. That's what happens to people. But anyway, I picked it back up. And oddly enough, I didn't really turn a corner until I started playing Guitar Hero at a buddy's house. And I went from terrible at Guitar Hero to really good. And I thought, what the hell am I playing Guitar Hero for when I could play a real guitar? So I picked up a real guitar, and it gave me confidence. I'm like, okay, all you got to do is practice. I practiced that damn game and got good. I'll practice the damn guitar and get good. And I started playing real easy Red Dirt songs. Like the first two songs I learned, Boys from Oklahoma by Ragweed, and Crazy Eddie by Reckless Kelly. And after I played those two songs, I thought to myself, okay, I can play the guitar. I can play real songs. So I started covering a couple things. Very quickly stopped covering stuff and started writing my own shitty songs. And from that point on, I'm primarily I don't even want to call myself a guitar player because I'm not that damn good, but that's the instrument I play. I'm a songwriter. That's what I am. I'm a songwriter.
And see, that's kind of how, when people have always asked, what were you doing when I'm like, I've always been a singer. I play at guitar, but I'm more of a singer, and that's just what I've always done. I mean, I can play, I can hold my own playing a bass, but I'm more comfortable. I mean, I can sit there holding a guitar, pick a little rhythm with it, I mean, I've done it, but it's still, you just use that as a crutch, I guess, to help you, get through, that one song, especially when you're first learning and you're trying to deal with those fears of getting up and singing in front of a group of people. Because I mean, I'll never forget the first time I got up in front of 500 people to sing at a church, and you're just like, you're like, wow, this is so many people. But then you don't think anything about it, years later when there's 1,500 people there, and you're like, oh, okay, whatever. It's even you think about it even less. But and I know you as an artist, tell me. I talk to so many different people across so many different genres and everything as well because, like I said, I will talk music with anybody. But it's what do you change what your performance is, whether it's 15 people or 15,000 people? Do you give that same effort and show into each and every one?
Well, I have probably played total 100 shows in my life, so I don't have a huge uh, catalog to study here. But
Okay.
I have played for a handful of people, and played for a couple hundred people. Um, and in both cases, I do not I do not get nervous. The only thing that has ever made me nervous is if I'm completely unprepared and don't know the answer to a question, or if I'm unprepared,
Yeah.
essentially. And if I'm up there playing my songs that I know, I'm prepared. I'm not worried about it. I could be playing, I could be playing in a backstage in a room with Robert Earl Keen staring at me, and I'd be fine. I could be playing for 80,000 people in AT&T Stadium, and I'd be fine because to me it's always been like hey, these are my songs and this is my show. If they don't like it, they can walk out.
Exactly.
And they did come here for a reason, so let me just be me and do this.
And guess what?
And
You got a microphone and they don't.
yeah, exactly. And I've always thought about it like that. Like whenever I do presentations, like in school or like an in service at a job or something, or if there's one that needs to be done, people are like, "Let Seth do it," because they know I don't care. I'm going to go up there. I'm gonna, I'm not nervous. I'm going to make a joke. I'm going to talk about the product. I'm going to answer any questions that come at me. I'm not worried about it. I've never been worried about being in front of people, and which again, really weird that I'm an introvert, but that's just, like I said, I'm an introvert because I like being alone. I don't have to be. I can do anything in front of a crowd, but I am curious. I'm very curious, and God willing, I'll get the chance someday. How it would be if I had a full band that I had chemistry with and had been playing with for a while, and was playing a big show like Billy Bob's Texas or Red Rocks Amphitheater or something like that. Like
Broon
I
Hall
think
or the
I
Caverns
don't
in
think it would.
Tennessee.
Yeah, yeah, those big venues with a lot of people showing up, because I do know that you feed off of a crowd,
Hmm.
and and I would like to see how fun it could get with a band that you're comfortable with in front of a big high energy crowd that's singing along to the songs. And I can't wait for that day, because that, to me, that's like I said, I love songwriting. My main thing is songwriting. That's what I enjoy doing. But I do think it sounds really fun to go on a stage where people are chanting your name, and then that you come out and sing a song and they're singing it too. I've never experienced that. And I do think that would change the way you perform. I don't think you could help it.
Oh, absolutely. You need there's so many good festivals out and about. You need to throw your name in the ring. Get that opportunity, man.
Yeah, I agree. There's artists that they they're not really well known, but they get on those festival circuits. They're like, "Oh yeah, I'll play the 3 p.m. gig for a festival that goes till midnight. Yeah, I'll do it." And they get that experience of being on a big stage with with a bigger crowd, and two, they 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 acquire new fans because people that don't give a damn about you are going to that festival and they see you. They see you on the poster, they see you on the stage, they might buy your shirt because it looked cool. And then three, when you're putting together a resume for bar owners or for gigs, you can say, "Hey, here's the list of people I've played with," and you can put that damn poster on there. Like
Yep.
I opened for these guys.
Yeah, and there's nothing like, having a poster that shows, hey, I opened up for, all the Braun brothers. I opened up for Reckless, and I opened up for Mickey and the Motor Cars. Hey, check this out. Or I opened up for Shane Smith and the Saints.
Instant legitimacy when you can put that on an email.
Yeah. Oh, heck yeah. Well, I mean, even when you're trying to market a podcast, it doesn't hurt either that, you've had some bigger names on and that, they, have nothing but good to say about the experience and everything too. And actually, here a little bit later in the spring, I've got Shane Smith coming on. So, I'm really looking forward to that opportunity to sit down and talk.
I heard that. I saw that you said it on one of your episodes, and I was thinking, damn, I'm guessing that'll be the most known guy you've had on there. Shane Smith is huge in Texas.
So, well, I mean, in Dallas Moore, he's gotten really big. He does outlaw. He does a lot with Billy Don Burns, who is a staple of, in the outlaw world. Been around for ages and ages. So, I mean, and it's just those opportunities. I mean, hell, I sent an invite to Jason Isbell. I was like, hey, I'd love you to come on and talk about your new album on my show. I said, we may be small, but we're mighty. But, it's just, what's the worst that can happen? You do an invite, you ask somebody, what's the worst going to happen? They're going to say no.
Right.
But,
if you kept sending those invites to bigger, Isbell and Childers and Sturgill Simpson, the guys that are really big right now, more than likely you'll get ignored and nothing happened. You didn't get fined. Nope. They didn't say anything bad about you. Like, oh, this guy invited me. What a loser. Nothing happened. They ignored you.
Yeah.
Like, who cares? So you should definitely fire all the shots you can.
It's their loss.
Because it's their loss anyway, by the way. But, if you get ignored by 20 big acts and then one is like, oh, yeah, man, that sounds cool. I got some time Tuesday. Bam, you hit.
Yeah.
You hit. Let's
do
it.
And it doesn't hurt that because of some of the relationships I've built over the years that, that artist and I might have a mutual friend that's like, hey, why don't you get my buddy, just help him out a little bit and come on the show. That never hurts anything.
No, not at all. Sometimes that's how you get another big act is because of the connection.
But, regardless, I don't care how many big acts I get on, it's still more, that adds legitimacy. But this show is always going to be about those guys that are still out there just plugging away day in and day out that nobody's had the chance to get to hear them and to introduce them to a bigger audience, which, is why, when you and I first started talking about this, I'm like, absolutely. I believe in your music and I want to get it out there to everybody that'll listen. But, before we go into the bare bones of things, which, you've listened to my show, you know how this goes. Hopefully you didn't do too much homework on that. With the fact that you like old 97s and that rock and roll that's got that feel and vibe and alt country, you need to go check out Brass Tacks.
Brass Tacks?
The Brass Tacks. Just plain old Brass Tacks. They're out of Oregon. They've got a new single coming out on the 31st. And a new album coming out in February. And these guys, you can find one of their latest songs on YouTube. It's called Out Yonder. Check it out. These guys are something else.
Keep the devil chained.
Yeah.
I like it already.
Yeah. These guys are so good. And one of the best group of guys you could hang out, you could talk to. Their guitarist and I have become great friends. I consider him family, so I always have to give him a plug when I get an opportunity.
We'll be listening to them and the other band you told me about. I
Oh,
wrote both
Southern
of them
Culture
down.
on the Skids, yeah.
Southern Culture. Yep.
You have to text me and let me know what you think.
I'll let you know.
All right, well, we're gonna jump in then. What is your favorite guitar to play?
My favorite guitar to play is it's a real simple answer. It's my Takamine. It's an S series, and it's the I've I bought like cheap ass guitars in high school. I don't even remember what they were. And I've been given some guitars. Like I said, I'm from a musical family. My grandpa gave me a nice Fender. He gave me a badass Martin. It's got a crack in it, but it is badass. It looks awesome. Dark wood grain. But my Takamine, that's the first guitar, acoustic electric guitar I bought, and I kind of, I kind of, I don't know. When I bought that guitar, I started writing a lot more, and I kind of turned a corner on it. So it's not the best guitar I've ever felt. It has a great sound. It feels good, but it's more of a like that guitar went through the bullshit with me.
Right.
So it's more of an
Yeah,
emotional thing, I guess.
it's kind of like an appendage at this point. It's just like
Exactly.
I still pick I pick a Oscar Smith. I love that guitar. It's got a good sound to it. Now, would I put that down for one of those, good high quality Taylors, upper end Taylors? Absolutely. But until somebody wants to sponsor that, I'm going to pick the hell out of this one.
Oh yeah, and I guarantee you, Willie could find a better guitar than Trigger, but he ain't going to. He's going to keep
Exactly.
playing Trigger till he dies. It's an emotional
Exactly.
attachment.
That's his thing.
Yep.
Okay. What band are you really into right now?
Right now, I'm like I said, I've been spreading out what I listen to a lot. Uh, I did listen to Dallas Moore for like 2 days straight because despite the fact that he's been grinding his ass off for what over like a decade, 2 decades, something like
Over
that,
2 decades now.
I I discovered him like 4 days ago. So I mean, talk about thank you God for this gift that fell out of the sky. When you discover an artist that's badass,
Yep.
it has a catalog of 10 something albums. That's awesome. So I've been into him and just a lot of Cody Jinks because
Right
I've
on.
only known about Cody Jinks for about 3 years, which I mean that's a long time, but he was at it way before that too.
Oh yeah.
And I've been into Cody Jinks a lot. Which Cody Jinks, not only do I love his music, but I really like the fact that he's fiercely independent.
Hmm.
I mean, I think he actually signed with a label one year and then dropped them. He's like, no, I like doing things my way. I don't want anyone to tell me anything that I need to do outside of my small circle, which I don't know, man. I'm weird too about I really do. There's people that say, I don't care if the guy's an asshole. I'm going to listen to his music. I'm sort of the opposite.
I am
If I
too.
if I hear a dude's like, if everyone says this guy is a huge asshole, and I might stop listening to him. And on the other side, if I really respect what a guy's doing and how he does it and how he is, I'm going to listen to him more and appreciate it more. Assuming there's something there. Obviously, I'm not going to. I can hear someone's the best guy in the world, and if he sucks, I can't do
Yeah.
it. but
Or if you
but
find out that they have horrible fans, that's
oh yeah,
that's the worst. When you go to, and I've got tickets for an upcoming show. I'm not going to say who it is, but here lately there's been catching grief for how horrible their fan base is right now. I mean, and I'm a fan, but apparently their fans at shows are just they act horribly. And I'm that's the one thing I'm nervous about this show. I know the artists themselves are going to be amazing, but the fans that are there kind of makes me kind of question that a little bit.
well, I know what you're talking about, and I won't mention the name either. But
Yeah.
one time we went to Lone Star Park, and we wanted to go see Reckless Kelly. They were opening for the headliner, and we didn't care about the headliner, but the headliner's fans were there in full force, and this was a college party type crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I've always been an old soul. I like for everyone to sip on some whiskey and just have fun
Yep.
and enjoy it and listen to the lyrics and stuff. And not that I'm against partying, but these people, they're like, I'm talking about girls on guys' shoulders throwing up off the shoulder, and then the guy falling down, and like people dropping beer on the floor, and it was terrible, and
Yeah.
it ruined the entire experience. But that's that dude's fan base.
Yeah.
So I'm like, man, that would really suck for your fans to just be a bunch of drunk jackasses, you know?
Yeah. You got a room full of douchebags.
That's exactly what happened.
Okay. Moving on. Next question. What is your all-time favorite book?
All time favorite book. I used to be a huge reader, and I don't read as much anymore. Although I just bought the first of the Lonesome Dove books. I'm really looking forward to that. That's obviously one of the greatest books ever read. If you hear anyone tell it,
Yeah.
so I'm excited about that. But I haven't read it, so I'm not going to pick that one. I used to read a lot of fantasy. I don't do that anymore. I read the first musical biography type book I read was an autobiography called Waylon, about Waylon Jennings, written by Waylon Jennings. And man, I enjoyed that so damn much. That might be my favorite book ever. I enjoyed it so much because obviously I liked learning about Waylon, but you want to put yourself in these situations while Waylon's talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a different time. I mean, it's freaking Waylon Jennings.
Yeah.
And he's telling these stories about these shows that got crazy, and when he was backstage, he got shot at, and just all this crazy stuff. And you're learning about one of your heroes. You're learning about an American icon, but you're also being inspired at the same time. And I've read most of Johnny Cash's book. It's like 8 million pages, and I've read 2 Willie autobiographies. And when I read that stuff, it's not just entertaining and informative, but it's very inspiring. I mean, one of the things Willie said was he was like 45 years old, and he was like struggling to pay the bills. Like he was known, he was a big songwriter, but he didn't have a lot of money. And I'm thinking, man, I've been so down before, like when I was 30, thinking this is never going to happen. Willie freaking Nelson hadn't really made it at 45. So if that doesn't inspire you to keep going, I don't know what will. Willie Nelson was a decade down the line from where you are when he hit big.
Yeah.
So that was cool. But anyway, the answer I'd say is probably Waylon.
Okay. Now, as a Texas man, I got a feeling I know how you're going to go with this one. Pulled pork or brisket, dry rub, or sauce. But if it's going to be sauce, what kind of sauce?
That is actually very easy. I'm going to go with brisket.
I knew that was going to be the answer. You don't ask a Texas man if it's going to be brisket or pulled pork.
Oh, yeah. Not just because it's brisket and brisket's badass, but I've never been a huge pulled pork fan anyway. To me, that's more of a put it on some good buns and put some barbecue sauce on it. I don't want to just eat pulled pork straight up. But barbecue sauce or dry rub. Honestly, if you cook the brisket perfectly, you don't even want barbecue sauce on it.
Exactly.
Because the flavor is there. And if you season it properly, and like I said, cook it properly, it will have what we like to call bark on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that bark, those burnt ends.
I love burnt ends. That's my favorite thing.
That black business on the side. Yeah. And there's a place in Tyler, Texas called Stanley's Barbecue. It's regularly a top 50 place in Texas. If you go there and ask for extra bark brisket, they'll give it to you, and you'll put it in your mouth, and you'll shove the sauce to the other side of the table because you don't need it. You want to taste that bark. But if I had to do barbecue sauce, I think I would do the typical Texas, a little bit of tang and some heat. That's what I like. I like heat in the barbecue sauce.
All right, I feel you there. Yeah, I don't know what it is about Carolina barbecue. Any place you go, you ask, hey, do you guys have burnt ends? And they just look at you like you got 3 heads. And I'm like, I cannot believe you people don't get what one of the best parts of barbecue is.
I'd be
outside
so
of
disappointed.
outside of a big old rack of ribs, like good old beef ribs too, like those dinosaur ribs. That's
Oh
about the
yeah.
only thing that's going to step up a little bit level higher.
Hmm.
All right. What was the first record you ever bought for yourself and or picked out and for somebody to buy for you specifically?
Well, I probably honestly don't remember. Like I was probably my parents probably got me one as a kid. I remember my dad got me a Kansas album because my mom and dad love Kansas, and
It's
it
probably
was a little.
leftoverture.
It might have been. I don't remember. And then he got me a Boston album, had like a rocket ship on the cover. But that music was like over my head. Like it was real, real. I mean, they're obviously like some of the best musicians of all freaking time. It's like classic music in rock form.
Yeah.
So that music was like over my head. I didn't get it at that. I was a little kid. I was wanting like a fun beat and crap like that. But the first one I picked out myself was actually, believe it or not, a burnt CD. That's I grew up in that era.
Yep.
Um, it was Blink 182 Enema of the State,
Okay.
and I downloaded the album, and then I liked it so much I actually bought it, even though I already owned it. It may or may not have had something to do with the cover of the album, which was a very busty nurse putting on a glove and holding an enema.
Yeah.
But it probably had a lot to do with that when I bought it. But I loved it so much, man. I bought Enema of the State, and then I bought their older album, Dude Ranch, and that's when I really started getting into punk music. So I think the first one I picked out myself was Enema of the State.
Okay. What was the first concert you remember going to?
The first concert I remember going to was, that Christian band DC Talk?
I absolutely do.
I went to a DC Talk concert when I was like 6 or something. It was at Six Flags over Texas. They had this amphitheater, and DC Talk sold that sucker out. There were a lot of people there, but I was like hungry and sleepy and hot,
And
and I was
grumpy.
crying. I was crying the whole time, and I remember standing under the bleachers where no one else was there and thinking, I just want to stay here until it's over. And I'm sure my parents knew I was there because they didn't mess with me, but I just stood there for like an hour waiting for the concert to be done, trying not to cry. So yeah, that was my first concert experience.
Wow. And it was a
I
bad
still do
one.
that at concerts.
I mean,
No,
I've
play.
seen them. I've seen them back in the day. So Star Wars or Star Trek?
I've heard you ask this one before, and I try not to think too much about it, but I did think about it. And if it's between those two, I'd pick Star Wars because I have very little experience with Star Trek. I haven't seen much Star Trek, but I'll tell you what, the best sci-fi story that I've ever seen is actually a video game called Mass Effect.
Yep, I
Mass
know it.
Effect. It's got like the greatest story, sci-fi story. The attention to detail, the twists, the turns, the personalities. Man, you can. I wish they would turn that into a movie because most people aren't going to play a video game just for a story. But man, that's the best. That's the most. You could probably find a YouTube video. You know how people like make a video of all the
Just all
story.
the storylines.
Yeah, you could probably find that on there. But man, that was. I wish you could get more credit. But if it's between Star Wars and Star Trek, I'm afraid I've never given Star Trek a proper chance. So I'd have to go with Star Wars.
All right. Good call anyway. Can't go wrong with that
Yeah.
one. All right. I'm going to hit you with another one. What is your jam song? And then also, what is your guilty pleasure song?
My jam song.
That one that the volume's going up and the windows are coming down and your foot's going down on the pedal. That you're getting into it. That's just it gets you going.
I'm sure you're familiar with the band My Chemical Romance.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, one of the greatest albums of all time, The Black Parade. The first two tracks are obviously two different songs, but the first one fades right into the next one. I believe the first song is called Dead. The second song, I forgot, but the first two tracks are, I consider those one song, and that song right there just man, I talk about drumming on the steering wheel and singing real louder than your voice can handle and your voice breaking up and shit like that. That's probably my favorite. Check that one out, by the way. And do not have your music device on shuffle, because there's nothing more disappointing than when that first song it starts building up and he's like yelling and the guitar's going bam bam bam, and then the next track's supposed to kick in and that's when you start biting your lip and jamming, but then it shuffles to a different song and you're like, why God did that just happen to me?
Man,
So make sure your shuffle's on.
I don't that never gets turned on. I want to hear how the artist and that sound engineer wanted that the progress to be heard.
Yeah,
That's,
as an album.
I'm old school. Yeah. I'm old school like that because I'm old. I mean, let's call a spade a spade.
Well, let me branch off of that real quick. You talked about the reverence of an album. That's really what you're talking about.
Oh yeah.
There's a trend nowadays where I listen to music business podcasts and stuff, and these business guys are saying stuff like, well, these days just release a single. It's just as effective. People don't buy albums. Release a little a 4-track LP. Well, man, I think people want the album. They want to hear what you have planned. They want the cohesive, like, how does the album flow? Do these songs, they want to grade the album like, I love this album. They want to say, I love this album. Like, people want that. And I think it's important to keep having albums as one piece of work.
I agree with you there. But I've also got he's been a guest on the show and he's become a friend as well. Jackson Taylor, he's got a different mindset. He's got the mindset that you release that new single and I mean, you have that new album, but you release all the new songs 2 weeks apart. And then you release the final version that's got everything. But he goes, the way you do that, he goes, that way you're getting everybody to actually make and take the time to listen to each one of those songs. And before they get tired of the whole album and just, it gets tossed aside or, deleted off of the playlist. Which, if you think about it from that aspect, it's kind of right. I mean, well, I still want to hear a whole album, and you're eventually going to hear a whole album, but this gives you the opportunity to truly sit down and listen and dissect. Now, I'm not saying only kick out one-offs and that's all you do. But if you've got an album, but you're just releasing, the individual, trickle them out, so people have the opportunity to dissect and listen to all of them. Because, everybody gets where they, they're going to listen to their favorite couple. They might listen through or do that quick scan through and see what's good, but they're not going to take the time to really listen to it. They're going to listen to the couple of ones they really want to listen to, and then they don't bother with the rest of it. Whereas if you're releasing them based off of, hey, you get this one for a couple of weeks to listen to, then you get this one. And at the end, you get the whole kit and caboodle, and then you can listen to it from, start to finish and truly digest it as an overall project.
And he's 100% correct, but that is from a business aspect. That's trying to get people to hear the songs. And that's what once again, those guys that are business experts, that's what they would say too. So from a business aspect, that's 100% correct. For example, we talked about my song Never Learn. It's buried. It's like track number 9. If I'd have trickled these out one at a time, people could have heard that one. But I think immediately, as you release them from a business aspect, that makes what Jackson said makes perfect sense. But like 5 years down the line, that album needs to exist. Because like he said, trickle them out and then release a full album. That's actually best of both worlds. That's perfect, because 10 years down the line, people are going to forget about the trickle. They don't care about that. They got that album now.
Yeah,
so
and they
kind of taking care of it short term and long term.
Yeah, and it's also building up for what's coming next. You build up that anticipation, and I don't know if you've listened to him a whole lot, but this guy he literally throws his whole heart and soul out on that stage when he gets on there. And if you talk to him, his mind, he's got a million things going on at the same time.
he I know I saw that I'm like a couple episodes away. Like I said, I'm listening to your stuff backwards.
Yeah.
And I saw him. I'm looking forward to it. I saw him. Man, it was like 10 years ago, a long time ago in Longview, Texas. It was a 3-piece, and someone said like his bass player didn't show up or something, and he was playing bass,
Uh-huh.
and like he was. I mean, I could just tell he was a wild dude, and this is 10 years ago, so imagine that. And are you familiar with Mike McClure?
No.
Mike, write that down. I cannot stress this enough because he wrote all this Red Dirt stuff you hear. He wrote a lot of it that you thought the artist wrote. A lot of Ragweed songs he wrote. He recorded the Diamonds and Gasoline album from Turnpike.
Really?
He recorded most of Cross Canadian Ragweed's albums. He's like a godfather of Red Dirt. Like
Okay.
listen to the Everything Upside Down album. That was his first album after his band The Great Divide broke up. Look him up. But he told me about Jackson Brown, or Jackson Taylor. Jackson Brown. He's good too, I hear.
Yeah.
But Jackson Taylor, he said, man, he's a really intelligent guy. Really intelligent.
Absolutely.
Sometimes can't get out of his own way.
Uh-uh.
But that's what happens when your brain is so active. Like, I mean, I'm sure you've been like that before. I'm like that sometimes. Your brain is just in every different direction. But he really got me. He got me real interested in Jackson Taylor because he basically, McClure is a space cadet. His mind is all over the place. He's super intelligent too, just a wild guy. And when he told me that, when he, out of his mouth, he said Jackson Taylor is really interesting and a smart guy, a funny, smart guy, I was like, damn, I need to get into Jackson Taylor. But I was waiting until after I hear your episode with him.
Okay.
That way I can get to know him a little bit and
Yep.
then start listening to his stuff.
You need to do that because then you're going to get a deeper appreciation and understanding of his new stuff and how to disseminate that and digest it, because it'll change your attitude about it'll change how you listen. So I do recommend listening to the show before you really start diving deep into the catalog. But I mean, he's a hell of a graphic artist too. He just released his first graphic novel, first part of the month. So I mean, and his mind is always going and going and going and going. His wife is what keeps him sane and remembering to eat.
He's just an artist, and art,
Exactly.
man, I draw all the time too. Like if you're more artist than the musician, you're going to create stuff.
You have
all over.
to.
You have to. That's what you do.
Okay. Who is a person, living or dead, that you'd like to take the stage with one time?
I've actually thought a bit about this a lot throughout my life because that's like an interesting scenario. And my first thought is always Waylon, but then I'll always talk myself out of it because, man, he's an intimidating guy. Like, he's, aside from the fact that he's really good, his voice is phenomenal. He's also just a real. I mean, he even crossed. He was crossways with Willie a couple times, and how do you get crossways with Willie? But Waylon, I don't know. Waylon's just a real intimidating dude. So I think whenever I talk myself out of Waylon, I go to Cash because I feel like me and Cash have a lot in common. I've read a lot about Cash. I watched a lot about Cash, and he had a real conflicted mind too. And just when he wasn't on Speed, which was a lot. When he wasn't on Speed, I feel like we had similar personalities too. So I think I'd pick Cash.
Okay. What would be your life's mantra, or, say your own little personal saying to keep you going?
I've been saying this for years. The best slogan that I've ever heard is from Nike. Just do it. Because, man, the only way to achieve your goals in life is to just start doing it. Just start working towards it. Because the people that don't achieve their goals, the people that don't succeed, they're the people that give up. They're the people that say,
tried.
Or never tried in the first. Well, that's the first time you give up is when you think about doing it and then you don't. But these people, they think, like, oh, I wrote a song and I played it for people and they didn't care about it. Okay, well, write another one. Well, but the
Exactly.
first one, and they think, well, the first one wasn't good. Well, just do it. Just write it. And then, I'd like to play some shows, but I don't know. I don't really have a stage presence. No, just do it, man. Play a shitty show. Do a bad job 10 times, and then the 11th time you'll be better. I
Get
mean,
up and do an
just do
open
it.
mic. Why not? What's it going to hurt?
Yeah.
Typically, who shows up for open mics? Other artists, and they're either gonna dig you or they're not. And yeah, I fully agree with it. Stop letting your own insecurities hold you back from getting to where you want to be ultimately. And that's something I tell my kids all the time. Don't let you hold you back, and get out and live your life. My parents would have probably told you that I was a maniac and had a death wish, because I'm a firm believer. If you're interested in something, I mean, I tried rodeoing for a while. I mean, I worked on a horse farm and breaking horses and everything. I've actually walked around for a month with a horseshoe print around my eye from one that decided that he just didn't want to get work that day. But
so
then,
that's what's wrong with you.
well, I think so. But then my little blue healers jumped up, snatched him by the nose, and flipped that big 1,200-pound beast over and had him pinned down like, I dare you to move. You hurt my daddy.
Man's best friend.
Exactly. I miss that dog every day. Okay, besides yourself, who should people be checking out today, music-wise?
When I hear this question, I immediately think to find someone lesser known, because no one needs me to say, Turnpike or Cody Jinks, because people already know about that. So let me think. If you want me to, the least known person that I can think of right now that I would suggest is actually a buddy of mine, but I would suggest him anyway. His name is Mondo Solis, Mando. He might go by Armando on Spotify and stuff, but Mondo Solis, he sounds a lot like Lucero. He's got a lot of that type of sound. Yeah, and
you're not the first person to bring him up. I've got an earlier guest that
Steve Idlet. Steve
Idlet.
Yeah, because they're both from the same area, so they probably know of each other.
Yeah, he turned me on to him. That's really awesome. And see,
yeah, so Mondo's badass, dude. He's really underrated, and he's smart, and he's actually played live on the radio at something in Lindale before. So he has like a little bit of steam, but he deserves a lot more. And another guy who's pretty well, he's relatively well known in Texas, but I bet you most people in America have no idea who he is and I don't know how to pronounce his last name, John Bauman or Bauman or Bowman. It's Baumann, I think. John Bauman. He's released like 3 or 4 albums. He's got a real unique style. He's really good and has a unique style. And he's just a really good songwriter. And Jack Ingram gives him a thumbs up, which is a pretty good sign.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So everybody's favorite question that we end the show with is, if you were an animal or you had a spirit animal, what would it be?
Spirit animal. Like one I identify with, right?
Yeah.
Well,
my wife uses people as spirit animals too, if that helps anything. She's like, "You're my spirit animal."
Well, my initial thought is like a real logical one. I think of food chain, and then I think humans are animals, but that's the stupidest answer ever. I'm not going to pick human. Man, part of me wants to pick like a tiger, because they are completely badass and they can beat the hell out of most anything they fight, or at least escape it unscathed. Yeah. But there's another part of me that really wishes I was like a Galapagos Island turtle that no one messed with. I could just get in my shell and chill out and write songs
and live for a couple of 100 years and be left alone.
just chilling out. Like that, doesn't that sound like the dream vacation?
Man,
Being
it
a
really
turtle.
does. Well, do you got any shout outs you want to throw at everybody, Seth?
Oh man, I I wish I had written a list because there's so many artists that no one knows about that deserve to be heard. There's another guy named Cheyenne Pitts. He's got like a I think 6 tracks online, but he's got a great voice. He's like a disciple of Joey Green, I think, who's also great. Um, like I said, Mondo Salas. There's so many, and I know I'm overlooking a lot of them, but I'd say, you know what? I would say tell people to. It, it sounds like a sales job, but follow me on my pages because I like to shout these people out because
Right
I
on.
like to shout out the little guys that deserve to be heard because they deserve to be heard. So I will shout them out from time to time for sure.
That's awesome because, I mean, that's also giving back to the music community that's helped bring you up too. And, if you've listened to my show, I'm a really big proponent of everybody supporting one another because guess what? We can all succeed. We can
Yeah,
all have a great fan base. And if people realize that, hey, these guys can actually get along and do this, and, because I know all the guys that I'm friends with, they lift each other up. It's not about the days of, oh, you might get two more people coming to your show than me. Who gives a shit? You know, and everybody jumps on everybody else's albums. Or if some, hey, I got a bass player missing. Well, hey, buddy, I got you this week. It's all about building that community, and the community is let's lift up the people don't everybody doesn't know about just yet.
you
And
are 100% correct, and let me piggyback on that. I want every artist. And I know a lot of artists listen to this show and will continue to. I want them to consider this. I promise you, you yourself will become more successful if you support other people. Because if you do the opposite, if you become a hater, people see that and word gets out and you become a pariah. People don't want to talk to you when you're like that. The only people you'll attract are other haters, and y'all are
yep,
going to be stuck on hater island and no one's going to care about you. But if you support other people, guess what? If you find this little unknown artist and you like tweet their stuff out like, hey man, this guy's really good, he's going to be super appreciative. He's going to follow you. He's going to share something of yours, and he might buy a shirt. I'm telling you, that's how it works. The more supportive you are, the more successful you will be ultimately. And hey, Garth Brooks, one of the biggest musicians, artists of all freaking time, he's known as a guy that supports people. Like,
oh yeah,
if you open for Garth Brooks and you're like, I mean, you're obviously known enough to open for Garth Brooks, but he'll like go backstage and talk to you and tell people about you and stuff like that. I mean, it's a simple formula. Be supportive, and it's going to come back to you tenfold ultimately.
well, I'm gonna tell you that if you ever get the chance to open for Dallas,
I would
he
love that.
he he's very much the same way. I've got some other guys that have been on the show that they've opened for Dallas that he actually sat out front listening to it, and then after everybody's show, he sat down with them for a couple hours and said, "All right, guys, this is what you're doing right. This is what you need to tweak, and this is what's going to take you to the top." And they said it was the
Was that
best.
Three Gun Whiskey? Three
Yeah,
Gun Whiskey said
yeah,
that? Yeah. They said that guy is so badass. He picked the closest table and just watched our show.
yep. And Dallas is that most genuine, down to earth kind of guy. Seriously, I mean, hands down. I mean, this guy, he's out 90% of the time. He's driving his old Harley to the next gig because that's how he's writing those new songs. And then he'll just meet up with the van and the band.
I love that dude. I just discovered him, but every time I hear someone talk about him, and I've like researched him on like outlaw music group pages and stuff,
Yep,
everyone says exactly what you just said. And if there's smoke, there's fire. So obviously he's a badass dude, and that
yep,
makes me want to support him even more.
yep.
I want to be like that. I want to be like
And
Dallas Moore. That's what
there
I
you
aspire
go.
to be like.
Because he's, I mean, and just seriously, a down to earth good guy, and real, very approachable and real. And there's a lot of people could learn some lessons from that kind of fella.
For real, man. Like I can't stand the opposite of Dallas Moore. I don't want to talk to that person. I don't want to open for him. I don't want to have anything to do with them. But I want to be friends with a guy like Dallas Moore.
There you go. Hey, you know what? That's the perfect way to end this show.
It
Ladies and
is.
gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in this week. Yeah, we got a little long-winded, but it's always worth it when it's a good conversation. So, folks, check back in next week, and I think you're going to be surprised by the next guest as well.
We were young and wild and free. You never could get over me. You never used your time wisely. You wasted your best days. I guess you didn't stop and think it through. All of the damage loving me could do. I broke your heart and I broke mine too. And so